Hello again. So I'm going to take you guys along on a project today that I've been wanting to do for a while. I came across a picture of this lamp on Google some years ago. I'm not really positive as to whose design this lamp is, but it is not mine. This is just going to be my take on the design. I do not have any plans or any dimensions for this lamp, so I'm going to be making it up as I go along, and I just wanted to bring you guys along with me. So let's get started. I chose a nice piece of black walnut that I thought might have enough meat on it to complete the entire project. This particular piece was from another project, so it was pretty square to begin with, but just to be safe, I went ahead and trued up two sides on the joiner. Then I ran the board through the thickness planer to make sure the thickness of the board was the same across the length of the entire board. Once the board was square and true, I could cut the final length of what will be the base for the lamp. I chose to make the base 10 inches long. This will both support the lamp and give me enough wood left over to complete the rest of the project. For sake of ease, I decided to cut the legs of the base at 1.5 inches each. This meant having just a little bit left over, which worked out alright because it cut off a little knot that would have ended up in the final product. With the legs of the base done, I could move on to the cross members of the base. I wanted these cross members to be 1 inch wide, which meant there's a little bit too much to be taken off with the thickness planer, so I went to the bandsaw and resawed this piece down to make it more manageable in the thickness planer. With the thickness of the board being more manageable, I set the planer to 1 inch and made my final pass through the planer. I wanted the center post of the lamp to be a square, so I ripped a 1 inch section off of this board. I then reset my table saw to 1/2 inch so that I could cut two 1 by 1/2 inch cross members for the base of the lamp. I flipped the board around before ripping the second strip due to a pretty severe split in this board. By doing this, I was able to remove that split entirely from the project material. I then cut all three pieces down to 8 inches, saving the excess of the 1 by 1 square to mount the lamp socket. I got lucky when it came time to drill the holes. I had from a previous project a jig that I had made to drill holes in a 1 inch pipe, so I was able to just set the 1 inch pieces down into this channel and use that to be able to repeat the same cut for each hole. To accommodate the hole for the cross members, I just had to slide the jig down and I was ready to go to drill the next two holes. To drill the hole for the lamp cord, I only wanted to go halfway through the stock. For me, this was very easy because with my drill press, I can set a user depth and it will stop exactly halfway through the workpiece. I just simply have to set the depth, bring the drill press down to the workpiece, zero out my drill press, and I'm ready to go. I can use these same steps to center drill the hole in the top of the fitting for the lamp components. With the holes drilled, I can move on to making the trusses. I chose a piece of curly maple that I got from my father-in-law from a sink cutout in a butcher block that he used to make a countertop. I went ahead and cut it down to 12 inches to make it easy to work with and to not waste that nice thick maple that I wasn't going to use for this project. Being that this was a countertop at one point, I did want to clean up both surfaces. So I cleaned one face up on the joiner and then ran it through my planer to clean up the other face. I then took it over to the bandsaw and ripped just over ½ an inch off of the board before taking it to the planer and taking it down to the exact ½ inch that I was looking for. After cutting the board down to its final length of 8 inches, I took it to the table saw and ripped a 1½ inch strip off of the board. The next part of the project was definitely the most tedious. I knew somewhat what I wanted the trusses to look like, partly from the picture that I got the design from, and partly just from what I wanted it to look like. Not having any real measurements to go by, I just kind of grabbed my measuring tools and started drawing lines. Funny enough, I did get lucky and got the ends to look exactly how I wanted them to look on the first try. I did know that I wanted the truss cross members to be around 1/4 inch thick because that's how thick the entire truss was going to be width-wise, so I wanted the cross members to match that width. As far as the angled cross members on the truss, I honestly just grabbed my square and started from the bend point in the truss and drew 45-degree lines. It just so happened to work out that by making those cross members the 1/4 inch thick that I wanted them to, the opposite end ran right into the intersection that I wanted it to run into. So this may look here like I know what I'm doing, but I honestly got very, very lucky that all of my random measurements ended up playing out. Not that I wasn't sure where I needed to drill and cut, I went ahead and marked out the negative space because after having gotten so lucky making all the measurements on this truss, I really didn't want to drill out the wrong spot and have to try that again. Now that it's all marked up, I'm back at the drill press and drilled the holes in both ends where the bolts will go. Then I drilled holes in all the places that I was going to cut out of the truss. Once that was done, I could head over to the scroll saw and start cutting out all the negative spaces of the truss. After removing the excess from the truss on the bandsaw, I took it to the disc sander to clean up all the edges and round over the way I wanted it to look. Finally, I can take it to the bandsaw, rip it into 2 pieces, and the trusses are complete. Next, I take all the pieces over to the downdraft table and sand all the pieces with 150 grit and then repeat the sanding process with a 220 grit sandpaper. I don't feel the need to go any lower than 220 because I don't want a high sheen on this project. The style of lamp that it is, I want it to look nice, clean, and finished, but I don't necessarily want it to be super, super shiny. After sanding, it was time to test fit all the pieces. I had these stainless steel Allen key head bolts already in the shop. I knew they were going to be a little long, so as I was test fitting, I went ahead and marked the new size that I wanted the bolt to be so I could cut them down to size. This is not a difficult thing to do, but being stainless steel, the bolts will do a number on your cutting wheel. I used a Dremel tool for better control and to take as little material off as I could. Once I cut it down to size, I could take the bolt over to the sanding disc to clean up the threads to make sure that the bolt would thread nicely into the nut. At this point, I decided I wanted a little bit more design, so I went ahead and took just a slight 45-degree angle off of the cross members of the base. After that, it was on to my favorite part of any project, and it was applying the finish. In this particular project, and in most of my household products like this, I chose to go with a Danish oil. I really like the way the oil brings out the color and the grain of the wood, and it's a great durable finish for being handled like this lamp that might be moved from table to table throughout its lifetime. The trusses required a little extra attention with a brush to get the inside cuts and corners. And this is what happens when you get a little too excited about your finish before you glue the base together. So I had to sand off some of that finish in order to glue the two base parts together. After a good cleanup, I marked my layout lines and was able to complete the glue up of the base. I used my little square to make sure that everything was laid out properly before clamping the whole project down to the table. While the glue was setting, I could start the initial assembly and add the lamp components. Feeding a lamp cord through a small, tight 90-degree angle can be a little bit frustrating, but with a little bit of encouragement and time, you can get it through there. Once the cord was through the fitting, I was able to apply the heat shrink and crimp on the electrical connection fittings. This isn't a necessary step, but I do prefer to do this in order to get the best connection I possibly can to make sure that my lamps last as long as they possibly can. Once the connections were all crimped, I hit the heat shrink with the heat gun and got it all nice and snug. Now that that's all done, I can run the cords through the bottom of the lamp socket housing and attach each cable to its appropriate terminal. Once that was done, I reassembled the lamp socket housing threaded it to the nipple, and the lamp components were complete. Now that everything is set and wired, it is time for the final assembly. After running the cord through the base, I didn't like how it sat up off of the lamp, so I wanted to make a small bracket to hold the cord to the lamp. I grabbed a piece of thin sheet metal that I had laying around the shop and traced out a rough 3/4 inch by 5 inch strip. This sheet metal is very easily cut with 10 snips, and the edges are easily cleaned up on the disc sander, with a little extra help from some sandpaper. Once it was cut and cleaned up, I was able to take the strip and wrap it around the lamp so that I could get the exact shape that I wanted it to be. This metal is very malleable, it's very easily bent by hand, so I was able to wrap it around the exact place where I wanted it to be to make sure that the shape was perfect without actually having to take any measurements. I did cut this strip a little long, so I was able to hold the shape in place, mark a new line, and cut off the excess. I marked a spot and drilled a hole for the screw that would hold this bracket to the lamp. Then I replaced the bracket and screwed it into the back of the lamp. Now all that's left to do is adjust the lamp's fixtures to their final position. Overall, I'm extremely happy with the way this lamp turned out, and I really enjoyed making it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found some of the information in the video useful. If you did, please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if this is something you'd like to see more of in the future. Thanks for watching. Until next time.